Women human rights defenders are playing critical roles in promoting and protecting human rights and peace in conflict and crisis-affected communities around the world. Women human rights defenders are instrumental on the front lines, whether they assist survivors of violence, document human rights violations, or negotiate for women and girls' access to education. Women human rights defenders challenge unequal and patriarchal systems for more just, inclusive, and lasting peace. They often carry out their critical work at their own expenses and often at grave risks to themselves and their families. Threats in many forms aim to silence their voices. Despite this, their participation and protection continues to be underfunded worldwide. The WPHF Funding Window for Women Human Rights Defenders, an initiative of the United Nations Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund and its INGO partners, is mobilizing urgently needed support for women human rights defenders in fragile settings across the globe.
When women participate in solving conflicts, peace lasts longer. However, far too often taking part means becoming a target.
Women human rights defenders are the bedrock of society. They speak truth to power. They ensure that the voices of the marginalized members of our societies are heard. They make sure that support and protection is extended to the vulnerable members of our society.
What we saw over the past few years was an uprising of authoritarian movements who hold something in common, which was targeting feminist movements, women's organizations, LGBTIQ plus groups. That's not by chance that it happened. It happens because women and feminist groups are at the forefront of the resistance of those authoritarian movements.
Today we're seeing courageous women protesting and defending human rights, being threatened, detained, and killed. Women human rights defenders are increasingly targeted, both off and online, and although underreported, sexual violence is often perpetrated against them.
Women human rights defenders are not only at risk because of who they are, women, but also of what they are doing, protecting human rights and peace.
In a context of increasing authoritarianism and global inequality, threats women human rights defenders face are compounded by misogyny and patriarchal expectations about their roles in society.
Flexible funding is essential for women human rights defenders to be able to continue their work with greater protection. Protection often also means different things for men and women defenders, so the flexibility is key.
Designed under the UNFPA's chairmanship of the Global Board of United Nations Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, and launched together with its international NGO partners, this new funding window for women human rights defenders is a strategic, multi-stakeholder tool that's making a difference in the lives of women defending the rights on the front lines.
Well, I think this is a very, very important funding because since we all are in an economical crisis, and especially women like me and human rights defenders and women rights defenders who had to flee their countries, and we did not have any chance to take anything with us, and now we are as refugees in many countries. Most of the time there are certain platforms that we cannot be there because of the lack of funding, and not being there means not being able to echo the voice and the message of Afghan women for whom we are thriving and fighting.
The WPHF Funding Window for Women Human Rights Defenders is a timely tool that is addressing the needs of human rights defenders at a global level.
Nous sommes venus ici à la COP 27. Ça nous a permis de faire monter la voix de la femme congolaise, la femme autochtone qui est méconnue. Ça nous a permis de lever sa voix au plus haut niveau des décideurs.
It is critical that together we join forces to ensure that the voices of defenders, including women human rights defenders, are heard and protected. This is also the spirit of the Secretary General's call to action for human rights. Advancing human rights is a collective endeavor.
We have been able to support the meaningful participation of 18 women human rights defenders, financially and logistically, in international and national events and meetings to advocate for more just, more peaceful, and more equal societies. We continue to work closely with our partners in the delivery of safety nets to hundreds of women human rights defenders at risk in conflict and crisis-affected countries around the world. The needs are here, the needs are real, the needs are growing. We need to make sure that they are met.
Aboga, involúcrate, aprende y reimagina nuevos escenarios para promover los territorios de paz donde no dejemos a nadie atrás.
We have to support women human rights defenders during the conflict in the work that they are doing and to raise their profile. This builds their legitimacy and increases their visibility to position them to be able to participate in efforts to achieve peace when the time comes.
Notre message que nous donnons, c'est de donner accès aux femmes au financement, surtout aux organisations qui travaillent en faveur des femmes, pour permettre aux femmes locales et aux femmes autochtones, pour permettre de faire monter la voix de cette femme-là au plus haut niveau.
As members of the United Nations family, we must work together to support women human rights defenders in fragile settings. They're calling for more support and deserve nothing less.
We need women human rights defenders to keep on resisting. To do this, they need your support.
If protecting women is the aim, participation is the only way forward. Support the fund.
We call on member states and the international community to stand up for the protection of women human rights defenders. It's past time for the world to match words with action and funding. Tools such as the funding window for women human rights defenders of the United Nations Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund must be financed.
Today we call on you, on all of you, to stand behind women human rights defenders from conflict-affected countries and to support their critical work.